Hey, what's going on, people? This is Mike with the Watch This video for April 18th. Um, Another red day in the SPY. I mean, I've been saying we've seen some chinks in the armor here on the in the overall market, which we really haven't seen in quite a while. So stay on your toes. I know I am. Wait for A plus setups and then also watch your position size. I will give a hat tip to Gunil, I think in chat. I hope I'm saying your name right. INVO. He just called a break of its early high. You know what? Let me get pre-market off of there. It topped out right here early on. This was the opening candle, and as it started to curl up, he called it back over the high of day. Right. So that was 293, and it went pretty quickly to 350 before slowly grinding lower the rest of the day. I thought that was a nice heads up. I've seen a lot of what I call squinkiness out there, right? So again, watch your position size, make sure it's an A plus setup. I made a video on PLCE. If you get your links to these videos from Twitter or StockTwits, it'll be on the page right below where you clicked on this video. There'll be another one. All right, I did just highlighting what I did with PLCE this morning, trying to do at least one, hopefully educational video a day. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, or you're not accessing via that page, it'll be on my YouTube page. All right. I also tweeted it on StockTwits and Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. I'm probably always going to call it Twitter. Let me turn that down. So what are we watching for tomorrow? Let me start with that reminder. So when you're watching the video, pause it if you haven't read that. When you're watching the video, you'll understand what I mean by watching these stocks tomorrow. So UAL had earnings and a massive candle there. Nice relative strength. So we'll see if it gives any kind of follow-through setup tomorrow. I also threw DAL on watch because it's kind of lagging UAL. It topped out at what, 48.19, and then you've got a couple other recent highs just above. So if UAL continues, you could also look at this one. And if you want, AAL is really lagging them. But anyway, I just went with UAL, DAL, WISA. I got to zoom in. Had the big rip yesterday, gapped up, sold off today. And then in after hours, it took out today's high and went over 11, after closing at 925. Right now, it's back down to the 925 area, though. So who knows? But certainly an in-play stock. And so it makes my radar. DJT, not a pretty daily chart, but did have a nice volume, nice bounce today. And, on an intraday basis was pretty damn strong. So I'm going to watch that tomorrow for a follow through of that bounce. ANAB, 4 days in a row down and then put in a green day finally. Kind of at support too. So the reason I found this was intraday had this big volume spike in the middle of the day. And I thought, hey, maybe something's up. Let me check the daily. And it held up pretty well after that volume spike. And it is in kind of a bounce area. So maybe we get a follow through tomorrow. CUTR. You can kind of see it here, right? You had this pop back here, and then you had a kind of a subsequent little mini pop here, and you're flagging. Not in love with it. It's kind of an obscure play. But I've seen that symbol lighting up the new high of day ticker, a couple times in the last week, over and over. So something might be up there. ZUO, big volume, closed off its highs, but definitely a strong stock. INDO just goes back on bounce watch. We had the massive 2-day run, now 2 days lower on declining volume. Again, that one's like completely dependent upon Middle East turmoil, it seems, and bad news out of the Middle East. And so, excuse me. So I certainly, I'm not hoping for that. But if you're trading and there is some bad news, the low-priced oil plays. I always want to call them baby oils, but then I picture a bottle of baby oil, and you get it, right? So the low-priced oil plays, if there's some news out of the Middle East or something or oil itself is cranking, certainly worth a look. Rent, still my favorite. Had this big 3-day rip, 2.5-day rip, if you will. Now it's pulled back on declining volume and a pretty narrow range today. It did not give any kind of setup today, which makes sense because it ended up below its open and felt like nobody was watching it. But if we get an A plus setup, I think we get a secondary squeeze on that thing. So it's still my top watch. I went in and threw Apple back on watch because it's just another red day and it's down in support. Any kind of strength in the market and Apple might bounce nicely off support. let me try that again. HYMC, another bottoming tail there. And so maybe if gold catches a bid, that miner might catch a bid as well. TRNO is just getting ahead of itself to the downside. You don't have like capitulation volume though. And I don't think I've ever heard of this thing. It's a REIT. Okay, Realty Corp REIT. So I don't know. I'm certainly not in love with it, but it's just looking for an oversold bounce. And to be honest with you, I'm not in love with this list at all. And then ANNX also like several days in a row down pretty much at support. So those last few are my bounce watches. Again, Rent is probably my favorite, but only if I get an A+ setup tomorrow. As always, let's work together in the pre-market and add gappers to the list. And I will see everybody in the pre-market in the morning. Have a good night.